Small bear?
Not that small.
No. Looks like a fucking grizzly bear.
I mean, it is just everything he does, it feels like. And even some of the stuff he does, like today, he's not with the team. He's kind of doing a drill off on the side. He sweats like he did all the team drills. But seeing Nick Bosa do a team drill is like seeing a bear in the wild. I don't know if this analogy works, but it's rare. We have not seen a
I
lot of
think it's
Bosa
easier
in
to
team
see
drills.
bears. More like a
I
mountain
know. I
lion.
don't know. I was just
You need to get Haberman on the Animal Planet.
trying to tie it together. Just doesn't do a lot of it.
Well, one thing I think is fascinating about the league is that, and I don't blame him because the money, I guess money's always been relative. Like in '93, whether a guy was on a 3-year, $10 million contract, that felt like a lot. Bosa's got a potential $120 million guaranteed, and the Niners are less worried about how much he's worth and more that they'll pay him every penny. They just need him to play. But I think he kind of represents, if you look around the league, the star players, guys with some injury histories, they don't practice really. Now again, he comes in incredible shape. You and I watch him do like it, just working on the side with himself. He's going 99 miles an hour. But it's got to be a pretty large jump from he's not going to play any preseason snaps. I mean, that's a lock to then just going and playing games. Like Ward, Fred Warner, Jimmy Ward, even Trent is out there getting some reps. So it's like they're not just going to go 0 to 60, even if they don't play one snap in the preseason against the Bears. Because I don't care if you're playing a shitty team or you're playing Tampa Bay or the Rams. Football speed in the game is, and players talk about it every single year. Like, there's a whole nother level. This is another speed, right? This is another deal. And then the playoffs, and even then the big games, like, yeah, this game felt even more intense. It's just, I do see how people complain, like, we've never practiced less, yet we have more injuries than ever. And I do wonder if some of it's just a little like Mike Tyson sparred before he fought Buster Douglas. Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather, before they fought each other, would spar getting ready for the fight. And historically, like LT, Reggie White, like, do you think if you and I, if you just could throw us into like a 92 Reggie White with Mike Holmgren, or 1987 Belichick and Parcells with LT and Harry Carson and some of those guys, I would imagine they're taking the majority of the 1 reps when the defense is on the field, right?
Yeah.
Or, the 85 Bears. And I'm not saying that as like Kyle and all these coaches are crazy doing this way, because I would agree with them. I would throw up on the field if I was a GM or head coach and a guy like Nick Bosa went down in middle of August. But like these guys do get hurt a lot now, it feels like, in the games. And I just wonder if there's just no one questions and we're just using Bosa here as an example, but I think a lot of these guys now, how hard they work. There's no like just drinking beer all summer on the lake and then come back and coach gets me in shape. Like, those days are dead. Bosa's working out 365, training for football with his family.
Feels like he's off sparring somewhere with somebody, like football sparring,
Yeah, he is. But they're clearly like, you can only do so much working out, and even at these practices without doing the drills. Like, ultimately, like Jimmy Ward today and Brandon Ayuk, you don't get that anywhere else. Those guys get, right, outside of the Niners facility or outside of when the pads are on. That does not exist, does a guy like that play where they collide.
You talk about those two guys in a major NFL collision.
Yeah, I'm just talking like, isn't that football? Like, that
and
is
you're
football.
trying to avoid it in practice. Like, even that,
and they're trying to avoid it. Yeah, they're not trying to take each other out, but it's just the feels of that. Like, Nick just doesn't get the feels. Kittle even now. And again, I'm not saying that these guys aren't going to be ready and kick ass. I'm more talking about injuries, right? It's just, is this the right way that the NFL is doing it now? And we're never going back. It's only going to get worse. But for a long period of time, the best players in our life practice all the time and just didn't feel like they got injured that much.
Yeah. There's a school of thought that practicing less actually prepares you less for the real thing. And so you get hurt doing the real thing.
You think Cal Ripken's his record's untouchable in baseball? I think it's fair to say, right?
I think it's the most untouchable. Yeah.
But I think that's kind of symbolic of modern day sports, that it's just, different times or 2022. I'm not trying to hold on to the past that way. I just feel like we had less injuries when we were kids, right? Like these guys were not taking rest days in the NBA in 1993. And if you look at some of their game logs, they're playing 79 games.
Yeah, I think you're right. But one question you'd ask if you're doing the study is, were there less injuries, or did more guys just play through injuries?
And their careers were less long.
Yeah, well, like not ACL injuries, you're not playing through that, but did guys play through stuff that today you sit for because you're just worth more and there's more money on the line, and you have more power as a player to say.
I understand all the variables. I'm not.
I know you do. I'm not. It's all those things are different. And in some ways, maybe someone would argue playing through some of that stuff made you stronger.
A lot of guys played through pain for sure.
Playing through fatigue. I think now we believe when you get fatigued, your injury risk goes up. But maybe having trained that way makes you more able to, play a full season. I don't know.
But you play hurt now in football, right? In baseball, basketball, they take you out. In football, I would imagine most high-level players are not feeling great come November, December, right? Especially the playoff run for guys.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not
just going to be like John Smoltz battling elbow pain, icing it up.
We had a no-look pass I saw that went viral on Saturday. So,
yeah, I saw the quote was, coach is a little relieved. McVay's a little relieved.
That he showed up?
I don't know that it's going well. But I think it's a legitimate question on Bosa, especially because Bosa does have an injury history, right? So multiple injuries in his history. And I understand, I don't think I would do it any differently because he has multiple injuries in his history. But you're kind of stuck. Like, are we practicing him to try and prevent injuries, or are we just going to give him as few meaningless reps as possible, especially when there's not, we're not going to put him out there against anybody other than Trent Williams. There people are falling on the ground doing things we cannot afford. If anything's going to happen, let's have it happen at least at a time when we don't regret putting him on the field.
Well, I feel like the last several years there's been some knocks on guys, right? Like Clowney doesn't practice. Hopkins doesn't practice. Julio Jones doesn't practice. That's not the case here. Like, this guy's not just watching. This guy, the 49ers are choosing to do this, right? This to me starts, this is Kyle, the training staff. Not, Bosa's there. Like, Bosa's full go. It's not, to me, like when you've heard like, Hopkins doesn't practice during the week, that means he doesn't practice. Like, he needs time off for his body. Bosa's rocking and rolling. They are just basically going, this guy's strictly for the season, which again, every human alive, you would choose 17 games with Bosa over 0 practices. No one's arguing that. My question is like, does it just work this way? Like, is this possible to avoid injuries, or he just steps into the arena where he is always, regardless who you're playing, a top 2 or 3 player on the field every time. He's getting the most attention. They're throwing everything. It's just, you're just going to 0 to 60, 17 to 20 times a year.
Yeah. And if he gets hurt, then I think you'll have a debate about it. But every year that passes without him getting hurt is a little more confident you get in doing it this way. Right. And this ain't going
to change, is it? There's no.
Well, no.
If he gets hurt, they wouldn't pivot.
You wouldn't think, but I mean, your argument would become stronger, right? Every person's body is different. And I always love those stories where it's like somebody, is 83 years old. They're like, well, how'd you do it? And the guy's like, a Pop-Tart every morning. I was like, well, I don't know who could argue. He's 83. We're at the end. We can now look back with hindsight and go, he lasted a really long time. How did he do it? I don't know. So if in 5 years we look back and Bosa's never been hurt, we're like, Nick, why don't you get hurt? You're like, well, I prepare and I don't, the Niners will be like, this is the way we should treat these types of guys. But you're right. If he were to get hurt in a game, it would only be further proof that he shouldn't practice.
And to me,
and usually this treatment comes with older players who have a physical reason maybe to do it less, right?
To me, this practice is, no one's disputing his understanding of what to do, how much he could play a game tomorrow and have 3 sacks. It's just more like, it'll be fascinating to watch. Like, is his body just because
your question is not, is he going to produce? Your question is, does it make him more likely to get hurt?
Yeah. And clearly, I think with him and Kittle, they have been overly cautious, because those two guys, like, if they asked George, will you practice full go? He wouldn't hesitate, right? To me, if Bosa, they said, hey, 97, get in there. It's not like he's like, no, man. He'd fucking run his ass in there and get an immediate sack.
He'd go if he was in today, like in a civilian clothes, and they said, go put on pads for the second half of practice, he would do it.
But, like, for example, what I don't quite understand, I'd be fascinated. They never give out this information. This is something they view very top secret. If Armstead hadn't got hurt, like Armstead was just normal Eric Armstead at practice, he's in there. So, like, why is it cool for, like, him just to be in there and get ready and Nick not? Just because his injury history? One guy has been more durable? It's just that simple? I mean, what's the logic?
I don't know.
Because then, hey, you practice Armstead, and boom, someone falls on his knee, he's injured. You know,
Part of it
that's
might
my whole
actually
thing always with football. It's like you can kind of play these games, you can kind of rig the game.
But John,
Bryant
part
Young
of it
just got in the Hall of Fame. Someone, a helmet fell on his leg, and he had a compound fracture on the field. His bone was sticking out.
Part of it might be that Nick does prefer it this way.
There's possible.
That
Could be a Bosa family thing.
There's just like, although Joey, I don't know, it'd be interesting what's Joey doing, but I don't
Joey's
know.
always been the other thing, I guess.
Coach, I prefer to get my work this way.
One element of this overall could be like, I'm a year away from getting huge money. Just let's make it through the season and then maybe more likely. But it doesn't feel money wise, but I don't know. It just crossed my mind.
It's an interesting thought. It doesn't feel like that either. Right? That something will change then. Because in a way, he has a presence that is a leadership quality. Like he's off to the side talking to Trent, watching some of these things happen.
Yeah, he does not practice with the team drills, yet every single player says he's having the best
practice. What are they basing that on?
Do they just show
the blocking dummy is reporting back to them?
They just show some of these clips and everyone's like, Jesus, look at this guy. They just see him in the shower. They're like, God, he's the best player on the team, man.